good players, they utilized spin, and they could see the spin, so could the audience. And it got to where you liked seeing that red, white, and blue ball spinning toward the basket.
When you had the right rotation, the perfect rotation on the ball, and it was going red, white, and blue around and around, it really was something to see.
And somehow the way they could loop and flip and finger roll, it had a lot more glamour and pizzazz.
After a rough start, the distinctive tricolor ball had become an unqualified commercial success.
Everywhere you went after a couple of years, the kids were playing in the playground with a red, white, and blue basketball.
The first 3 or 4 years of the ABA's existence, the biggest hole in their game was the big man.
The main difference, I believe, between basketball as played by the National Basketball Association and the American Basketball Association now is purely one of size. We do not have the superstar big 7-foot center.
The ABA came along and says, well, we don't have Bill Russell and we don't have Wilt Chamberlain.
And we don't have the superstar 6'6" and 6'7" guards.
How are we going to solve this ABA problem?
Remember, it's only in the ABA that you get an extra point for sinking that long shot, making for some exciting dead-eye shooting in clutch situations.
Move the ball, take the break. I mean, there were many a time coming down the floor, Slick would be yelling at me, you know, take the three. Billy, pull up and shoot the three.
The ABA feels that this extra incentive to shoot from farther out causes the defense to open up.
That opened up the defenses, so now you could drive from the wings and get under the defenses, and there was more action.
Create a more exciting game for the fans. Give the team that's behind an opportunity to close the gap quickly with long three-point shots.
Gives the little man more of a chance to balance up his value in the game compared to the big man.
The ABA soon became a shooter's paradise. Among the best were Kentucky's Darrell Carrier and Billy Keller of the Indiana Pacers. But the master of the three-point shot was the league's all-time leading scorer, Louis Dampier, who played all 9 seasons with the Kentucky Colonels.
I shot 500 one year, or maybe more, and hit almost 200 a couple years in a row.
We would come down on a 2-on-1 fast break. He's running to the corner to shoot a 3 on a 2-on-1 fast break. Now, when you see that for the first time, and you're a purist, you're not very happy with his shot selection.
While the three-point shot and red, white, and blue ball defined the ABA, both innovations irritated the NBA. The company line was that the new league was making a mockery of the sport.
It was something they could latch on to. They called it the funny basketball, and the three-point play, that wasn't really basketball. They kept saying, well, you know, that's not the way Naismith invented it.
I don't think it was the players that looked down on us. I think it was the close-knit type of country club atmosphere the NBA had. We have our little club, and you can't come in, and we're better than you.
The NBA at that point was a very arrogant operation, manifested clearly by Red Auerbach's operation with the Boston Celtics.
We didn't pay much attention to it. We thought it was a bunch of guys trying to become pests.
He was the great Satan as far as the ABA was concerned because he was so anti-ABA.
They weren't playing in big cities, number one. Number two, they didn't have enough credible ball players.
Red Auerbach said, those clowns can't play basketball.
Sort of minor league with a couple players. And it's always a question of how long would they continue to lose money before they folded the tent.
After 2 relatively benign seasons, it was painfully clear to the ABA that its effect on America's sports culture was almost non-existent. Even worse, the league was unstable. 6 of the original 11 franchises were already in different cities. Almost all were in financial trouble, including the defending champion Oakland Oaks, who celebrated their second-year title by moving across the country to Washington, D.C. The ABA was in danger of an early demise. Something had to be done.
Almost everything we did was reactionary. So a crisis developed and we addressed the crisis, or a need developed and we addressed the need. I think the thing that distinguished the ABA is that everyone knew they had to work together if they're going to survive. So there was a forced camaraderie. It's a little bit like being on the hill at Iwo Jima. You either pulled together and did it, or you weren't going to survive.
For the ABA, survival meant bending the rules, like signing Spencer Haywood when he was a college sophomore. At a time when the NBA forbid its teams from even talking to underclassmen, Haywood felt the policy was unjust.
I'm going to challenge this, you know, and they're looking at me like you're crazy. And then I said, well, but, you know, my mother won't live another 2 years down here and picking cotton and scrubbing floors on her knees. She just won't. So I want to do something for my family. And everybody sort of come to an agreement and said, give it a try.
How are you going to do this and justify it publicly? And in the course of one of our after-meeting sessions of staying up all night and drinking beer and trying to figure out what it was we were going to do, we came up with the quote, the hardship draft. And for players that had a hardship, we would be able to be the benevolent sons of the American way and give them a way out.
In his first year with Denver, Haywood led the league in scoring and rebounding and was named the ABA's Rookie of the Year and Most Valuable Player. The gambit had worked. The ABA had a new strategic weapon in its fight with the NBA.
One of the theories was we wanted to draft players early, way ahead of the NBA, so that we'd have an opportunity to try to get the players signed. There were lots of drafts, all, in quotation marks, secret drafts.
They're having a secret basketball draft in there.
And of course, the reason we did this was supposedly to conceal the information from the NBA so that we could go after these players without their knowledge of who was doing what.
When we were having those secret drafts, there was a lot more going on than just a draft. We would discuss among ourselves.
What is the best way to get this player into this league? And who has the best shot of doing it?
For instance, the Don Boosie case. He's drafted by Phoenix, and he's drafted by Virginia Squires. Slick Leonard calls me and says, he won't go to Virginia. He'll come to Indiana. I said, okay, so you take him.
I was drafted by the Dallas Chaparrals. I told representatives from the ABA the only team that I would be interested in playing for was the Kentucky Colonels. Well, about a week later, the Kentucky Colonels had my rights.
You didn't have to be a genius to figure out if you were in the state of Kentucky and you could have Dan Issel play on your team from Kentucky. That was much better than having Dan go to Anaheim or to go to Pittsburgh.
The consensus All-America team my senior year was myself, Bob Lanier, Rick Mount, Calvin Murphy, Charlie Scott, and Pete Maravich. And out of those 6 players, 3 went to the NBA and 3 went to the ABA. The players were able to stay close to where they played college basketball. I went down the road to Louisville from Kentucky. Rick went down the road from Lafayette to play for the Pacers. Charlie Scott went from North Carolina up to play for the Virginia Squires. So that year was really when the ABA started making some inroads into getting some young talent.
As a sophomore, I left Indiana University early. My father was killed when I was a senior in high school. He was a construction worker and fell from a scaffold. I thought it was an opportunity, first of all, to help my mother because she didn't work. The Pacers were a local team, and I thought that this would be a perfect fit, me being home and still being able to play pro basketball or realize my dream. And the NBA could not offer that.
They were trying to stay afloat, and the only way they could do it is sign just a few top players, giving them a lot of money, and it was either do that or close shop. So they took the gamble to do that.
Big money contracts for big-time players, like the one Artis Gilmore signed with Kentucky in 1971, became commonplace in the ABA. A year later, Billy Cunningham, a perennial NBA All-Star, left the Philadelphia 76ers for the riches of the Carolina Cougars. The leagues were at war, and the ABA was winning more than its share of the battles.
The ABA was costing them money. It was driving salaries up due to the competition factor. Everyone had to live with the cloak and dagger CIA aspect of the draft every year, competing with the ABA for players. All these things added together created the ABA as a monster in the NBA eyes and the enemy.
And the enemy was about to get a new weapon.